Hello and welcome to the second in our series of Java's for beginners. Today we're going to be looking at using variables, storing variables and manipulating them to some degree. We've got an example here which is a profile page where you might store your details, Facebook, that sort of thing. And we're going to try, if this is the front end, like where you put your details in, we're going to be looking at doing like behind the curtain and creating sort of the ability to store that data.
So what I've done already is using last lesson's work, I've set up a NetBeans project, a profile class. So I'm going to start working on this. Now the first thing we need to make sure we do is to store your name, which is a sensible thing to do. And we're going to store your name as a string. Now the reason we need to tell the computer what type of data it's going to get is because the computer's expecting something. And it needs to check that what it's expecting is the right thing. In this case, a string is a load of text, or letters, or numbers, spaces, sentences.
Yep.
And I'm going to give this a name, var name. Now we're going to call all our variables, which is what this is, which is something that can change in the course of the computer running the program.
Yes.
We're always going to start them with var, so we can tell them apart from other things. It's highlighted it, so we know it's a var. And I'm going to do this simply by putting in speech marks the name of our student, who is Joe Bloggs. Now he's been in practically every class I think I've ever taught so far.
Many Joe blogs I've had over the years, many.
The semicolon at the end just tells the computer where that finishes. You notice that already we've got that highlighted and it tells us it's not used. That's quite handy for us
Oh yeah,
because we
indeed.
know it's not been used yet. And let's output this just to make sure we know it works. Just using the lesson we learned last week, system.out.println, and in the brackets this time, instead of using speech marks, we're just going to call the variable var name.
And we're hoping this is going to print to the console that value there, Joe Bloggs. That's our hope.
Press the play button, and hopefully, Joe Bloggs.
Excellent.
It's missing something though, sir. I think we should probably say your name is, first of all, shouldn't we?
I think so, which is a really useful tool that you have available to you in Java. Essentially, what I can do is, in this system.print, I can start just typing with speech marks what my message is going to be. So, your name is, just in case you were getting confused.
Just in case you're confused.
Yeah. And then I'm going to put a space, speech marks. Now, that's just come with a big red line here, because I need to tell the computer that I now want it to sort of get this bit, your name is, get this bit, var name, and just stick it together. And I do that by just going plus. Now, we've all encountered plus. 1 plus 1 equals 2. But in Java, if you have strings and you get this plus this, it's called concatenation. It's a fancy word, isn't it? But essentially it just means it's going to get that bit and just stick it together.
And the plus there is the glue that sticks it together.
Absolutely.
And I think a plus there, so it should give us a more useful message. There you go. Your name is Joe Bloggs.
Success.
The next thing we're going to do, sir, I think it's over to you.
Yeah, we're going to be looking at I'm not going to labour on this too much, but if you see string here, when we define that data type, it started with a capital S. Well, capitals, beginning of things, indicate it's a class. The next thing we're going to do is something called a char, short for character, like a letter, basically. Yeah. That's what we're talking about here.
We'd always call it char, and some people online will call it a char, but those people are muppets.
They're wrong, basically. I don't want to get too personal about it, but something's gone wrong in their past. And string is made up of chars, and that makes sense, doesn't it? You know, Joe Bloggs is made up of the character J, the character O, the character E, etc. And we'll call our variable now, and call it var gender, because I want to store whether he's male or female, M or F. And again, I'm going to use var because it's a variable. And I'm going to use, though, another thing, I use an apostrophe. For text, for strings, we use speech marks. For powers, we use apostrophes. So I'll just put it in here, and I'm going to use M, we'll store it, and why don't I stick it in here and put a bit more glue in, a bit more adding glue.
We'll put some concatenation in,
and
that's what the glue is, really just concatenating these strings together.
That's right, and your gender is plus, and I can just add it in again, var gender. And we're hoping to see now that when it spits it out at the end, there we go, your name is Joe Bloggs and your gender, I suppose you should say is M, really.
It'd be fine.
Your gender M. Your M.
Now you notice what we've done as well, so is we've kept all our variables when we define them together. that's really just so it's easy for us. But we're going to move to the next one now, because the next thing I want to store is Joe's age, so that might be useful.
Oh, absolutely.
But what we're going to do is store it as an int, which is short for an integer. An int, lowercase, var age. I'm just going to type in his age, and Joe is 16. You'll note, sir, that I haven't put that with anything around the number.
Nope, it's plain.
The computer is making some assumptions. If it sees something in speech marks, 2 of them, it thinks it's a string.
Yes.
If it sees one letter in apostrophes, it thinks it's a character.
Yep.
If it sees a number on its own, it thinks it's an integer. An integer, by the way, is a whole number.
Yep.
There's no parts to it, it's a whole number. 16, 17, 18, 145 million. It's a whole number. So I'm going to pull that up now, and let's just start a new systemout.println. Just because we're dealing with a different type of data now. So I just want to separate that from the rest of it. And I'm going to concatenate here as well. I'm going to put the glue in. I'm going to put var age. I can spell.
Second
Add to that then. Years old. Semicolon at the end of that. And if I compile that, it should give us 2 lines now. The first one. You see, I put the S in there. World of Pain.
Classic error.
And we click that, and then you get 2 lines.
Success.
So the computer has automatically noted what to do with that integer when it puts it in a concatenated string. We've got that there. The next type of data set.
Yes, well, as Mr. Morgan just referred to, an integer is a whole number. So that's, like an age would be a whole number. I don't say I'm 31. Obviously, I look younger anyway. But I say I say I'm 31. I don't say I'm 31.6489 or whatever I am today. But for some things, we do need to have that ability to have a floating point, like your height. The difference between being 171, 170 centimeters. Like if you were making somebody like a sized thing properly for maybe your trousers, you want to know that precision. And we use that. You call it a double. Now, a double allows that floating point, that dot, to exist there.
That decimal number, in other words, comes into it here.
That's it. And I have a variable var height. And var height, I'm going to store it, and this guy's going to be a giant guy. It's going to be 197.4 centimeters tall. I can't say centimeters in there because the computer doesn't really know that. It just knows it's a double number. And why don't I stick it here as well? Not only is he that many years old, but also you are also how tall is he? He is var height tall. Tall.
You put equals there, that plus.
Sometimes I worry about myself. I'm not sure I just did that. And hopefully we'll have some success and I will spit that information out.
Brilliant.
Success.
And it's even spat out the decimal section of it. And the nice thing is the computer is automatically guessing what is what. If you put a decimal in there, it automatically assumes it's a double. So you've got 4 basic data types there, and they're probably the 4 you use most often.
Oh, for sure.
But there are many others. We've put a table linked to this video, which you can go and have a look through and use, which gives you common examples and more data types you can use. But it occurs to me, so what happens if we get an issue with, say, an integer? We could store an integer value as simply a string, couldn't we?
Yes, we could.
I mean, what happens if I just say string there rather than int?
Well, that's
Does that cause a problem?
Remember also, because now we're storing it as a string, we need to put speech marks around 16. The computer just won't compile at all, by the way, if you're wondering what happens if you don't put that in.
Well, it works.
It does.
But what's the problem with storing it like that? So,
see, here's the issue. When you put the plus, we talked about that being glue, sticking together bits of string. Well, sometimes you don't want to stick things together, you want to just add things up. And if you have an int 16, and maybe another number, like adding 10, then if you've got them, one stored as an integer, the other as an integer, then it will add them up.
So can we try that? Let's try adding them up. Let's say you are, and what we're going to do, I'm going to put this var age in brackets. It's always quite important, especially when you're doing maths, to keep the mathematical sections separately.
Absolutely.
So in these brackets, I'm going to add 10. And at this time I mean the add to be an addition rather than a glue.
And you see here we've got int, it's stored as an int, not as a string now.
Yeah.
So we're hoping this will actually add it together.
So I'll say you'll be this year old in 10 years. And if we compile that, hopefully the computer will There you go. You are 26 years old in 10 years. So, using that plus, the computer is working out that what I mean when I use an int is I want an addition rather than some glue. And that's really helpful to us.
Absolutely. I would say, just a quick wrap up, if you want to store as a string, you use speech marks, char, you use apostrophes, int and double, you leave it without anything outside it. But the best advice I can give you, and Mr. Morgan I think would agree, is that you now need to use these things. Create some more variables, store some other information. Think of another, maybe the data that maybe a school or university could hold about you. Try and put that in, add that information in, play around with system.out, see what you can do.
The best possible thing you can do is go away and practice your concatenation, and also maybe look at things like date and time, which are data types we haven't talked about, but there are specific ones that work in a slightly different way.
Yes.
That's it from us for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.